General Hospital spoilers for Friday, April 25th. Predictions. Marco stood before the imposing mahogany conference table, the soft hum of the law office's fluorescent lights wrapping around him like a cloak. His tailored navy suit felt suddenly too warm, uncomfortable against the tension knotting his stomach. Across from him, Alexis Davis and Diane Miller regarded him with fathomless gazes, two titans of Port Charles's legal world whose careers had been defined by battling the kind of corruption that his father, Cyrus Sidwell, embodied. Every fiber of Marco's being trembled as he grasped the edge of the table, steadying himself. This moment would define him, either as a son irrevocably bound to a criminal legacy or as the man he had struggled to become. He inhaled slowly, recalling the nights he had cowered in the shadows of his childhood home, listening to Sidwell's monstrous arguments with his mother. He remembered watching neighbors vanish, property titles change hands through threatening letters, and families shattered by fear. In that crucible of brutality, a spark of defiance had formed in Marco's heart. He had refused his father's orders more than once, orders to intimidate, bribe, and destroy innocent lives. At 17, he walked away from Sidwell's world, enrolling in law school with nothing but a stubborn resolve to fight injustice rather than propagate it. As a child, Marco began, voice low but steady, "I watched my father wield fear like a weapon. But I refused to become that weapon." He paused, meeting Diane's cool stare before continuing. "I chose a different path, one of service, advocacy, and integrity. My blood may be his, but my soul is not bound to his crimes." His eyes flicked to Alexis, whose lips were pressed into a thin line. He pressed on, unveiling specific instances, the pro bono cases he had taken on in law school, defending battered women, the night he had stayed awake drafting petitions for a wrongfully accused man. Each anecdote was a blow against the accusation that his loyalty lay with his father's empire. In the silent aftermath, Alexis and Diane exchanged looks loaded with unspoken questions. Could they trust a man whose last name conjured nightmares in the courtroom? But Marco's unwavering gaze, the nuanced honesty in his confession, began to chip away at their skepticism. Years of defending the powerless had taught them that redemption often arrived cloaked in contrition and conviction. Slowly, Diane's shoulders relaxed. Her gavel-hardened instincts recognized authenticity when they saw it. She nodded once, decisively. "We'll give you a chance," she said, voice firm, echoing in the room's stillness. Relief ignited in Marco's chest, but he swallowed it down. This was only the beginning. He had to prove that, name aside, he belonged here. As Diane detailed the firm's pro bono agenda, its crusade against human trafficking rings and corporate fraud, Marco imagined himself spearheading those efforts, turning the scars of his past into engines for justice. Across town at General Hospital, a storm of a different nature raged within the alabaster halls of the cardiac wing. Sonny Corinthos, once the untouchable mob kingpin of Port Charles, now lay vulnerable beneath the precise hum of medical machines. His chiseled features were softened by sedation, the surgical team's masks obscuring their expressions. Yet Carly Spencer's eyes blazed with fierce devotion. She refused to be a passive observer. Moments earlier, Carly had brushed aside objections from nervous nurses and insisted on being wheeled into the operating corridor. She refused the plastic chairs in the waiting room, instead perching at Sonny's side, grounding him with her touch. When he squeezed her hand as the anesthetic took hold, her heart clenched. The facade of invincibility he projected throughout their life together was stripped away in that instant. He was merely a man, fragile and in need of rescue. Brick, ever the hulking protector, hovered nearby. His imposing frame cast a shadow on the tile floor, yet his eyes darted not outwards, but into his own doubts. Could he safeguard his boss here, where the weapons were scalpels and viruses invisible to the eye? His knuckles whitened on the gurney's rail as the doors swung closed and Sonny vanished into the OR. Carly's final plea, "Come back to me," echoed in the corridor long after their silhouettes had faded. The minutes stretched, a cruel mimicry of eternity. Then, Through the observation window, Carly's breath caught. A dark scrubs-clad figure slipped inside the oar, moving with deadly purpose. Something in the angle of the man's head, the way his hand lingered at the foreline, set Carly's instincts ablaze. She lunged forward, overriding commands not to interfere. In a flurry of motion, she stormed in, whooping utter defiance in the face of protocol, knocking the syringe from the imposter's grip and driving him back. Panic ricocheted off the stainless steel walls as the surgical team reacted. A veteran surgeon fired orders. Nurses restrained the charlatan. Carly, heart hammering, hovered over Sonny's chest, her mind a whirlwind of horror and relief. She cradled his hand, pressing a silent vow, no darkness would haunt this surgery. Meanwhile, under the shroud of pre-dawn darkness, Natalia Rossi lay awake, guilt pulsing through her veins like electric current. She had done the unthinkable. In a misguided attempt to keep lines of communication open with her ex, Cyrus Sidwell, she had mentioned Sonny's upcoming heart surgery. At the time, Sidwell's interest seemed benign, perhaps just curiosity. But now, faced with an assailant in a surgical coat, Natalia realized she had handed her former rival a dagger dripping with poison. Her phone rang shrilly, Brick's urgent voice slicing through her panic. "Mrs. Corinthos, he's been attacked." Natalia's pulse thundered. She bolted upright, blanket discarded, as a tidal wave of shame and terror crashed over her. She had betrayed her husband's trust in the cruelest way possible by sharing information that imperiled his life. Trembling, she sent frantic texts to Carly, to doctors, to anyone who would listen, begging forgiveness she felt she didn't deserve. By morning, the deadly attempt on Sonny had leaked into every corner of Port Charles. The Corinthos mansion buzzed with whispered updates. Carly stood watch by Sonny's bedside, her face pale but resolute. Brick confronted Natalia, whose tears fell in silent torrents. Nick Quartermain's investigators piled in, outlining the link between Sidwell's knowledge and the assassination plot. Natalia, voice barely above a whisper, confessed, I thought if we talked, maybe he'd help protect Sonny. I never imagined." Her words died on a trembling sigh. Not far from those heavy heartbeats, Brooke Lynn Quartermain navigated an emotional minefield in the crowded, fluorescent-lit hospital cafeteria. Cody Bell, scarred not only by a recent car accident but by the growing chasm between them, stared at her across the table. The half-eaten sandwich Brooke Lynn had brought to soothe his physical wounds now sat forgotten. His eyes, once warm with gratitude, were now clouded with suspicion. Brooke Lynn forced a light laugh, smoothing a strand of hair behind her ear. She had rehearsed every excuse possible: stress from work, worries about Sonny, anything but the truth she guarded zealously. That truth was monstrous in weight. She and Dante had secretly welcomed a child, his and her own bonding miracle, and hidden that child's existence to protect them from a web of mob vengeance and family expectations. Cody set down his napkin, his voice gentle but firm. "Brooke, I've known you too long to believe you're just worried about the cafeteria menu. Something's wrong. With us. What aren't you telling me?" His words hit her like a freight train. She opened her mouth, ready to deflect, but the words tasted of ash. Before panic could fully consume her, Molly Davis burst in, her teenage exuberance a sudden beam of sunshine. "Mom, Cody, guess what? The baby's room looks adorable now," she chirped, oblivious to the tension. Brooke Lynn shot Cody an apologetic glance, thankful for the reprieve. But inside her chest, her heart thundered a warning. This secret could only stay buried so long. Every laugh, every shared glance with Cody was a reminder that one slip would shatter more than their relationship. It would endanger lives. In a softly lit nursery downstairs, 6-year-old Danny Morgan rocked back and forth in his chair, the hush broken only by the gentle coo of a mobile swaying above him. He stared at his small fingers, knuckles scraped from playing too roughly with his action figures. His thoughts, however, lingered on a deeper ache, the absence of his mother, Sam. He fingered the edge of a framed photograph, her smile frozen in time. Jason Morgan, his stoic uncle and protector, crouched beside him. His calloused hand rested reassuringly on Danny's shoulder. "Hey, champ," he said softly. "I know you miss her. We all do." Danny's lower lip trembled. What if she doesn't come back? Jason swallowed hard. He recalled Sam's fierce promise. She would always shield her family, no matter the cost. "She will," he vowed. Then, kneeling lower, he shared a heavier promise. "We have to protect another child, too. Sasha's baby. You understand?" Danny nodded, his young brow furrowing. "So, I pretend he's my brother." Danny took the secret like a solemn oath. In that moment, the boy's sorrow became interwoven with a courage far beyond his years. He clutched Jason's hand, resolve shining in his tears. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll do it for them." In the vaulted quiet of the Courtemain Law Wing, Dante Falconeri wrestled with his own turbulence. His desk was strewn with case files, everything from embezzlement charges to domestic disputes, yet his mind churned on a matter far more personal, his stubborn, tempestuous sister-in-law, Christina Corinthos. He had spent the morning walking her through anger management sessions, cautioning her against further retaliation toward Ava Jerome. Christina's green eyes still blazed when Dante had left her. "I can't just sit by while she ruins this family," she had declared. Dante recognized the spark of vengeance that once fueled his own fire in police work, but he also knew how quickly vengeance could devour its architect. He dialed her number now, heart pounding at each ring. "Christina," he began when she answered, voice steady but urgent. "You have to let this go." Her response crackled through the line, tense as drawn bowstring. "I don't need you telling me what to do." He swallowed. "I'm not your jailer. I'm worried about Dad. He's already on that table." Silence. Dante pressed on. "One more move against Ava, and you risk dragging him into another nightmare when you said you'd let him heal." Christina's breath trembled. "I hate feeling powerless." "Feeling powerless is not the end," Dante countered softly. "It's the beginning of trusting the people who love you. Trust me." As the line went silent, Dante exhaled, turning away from the framed photo of Angelo and Sunny dancing at the nurses' ball. The weight of his promise, to protect two families at once, pressed on him like anchor. From the lofty halls of justice to the sterile corridors of healing, from whispered secrets in sunlit cafeterias to the soft lamplight of a child's room, the day's events in Port Charles wound together into an intricate tapestry of loyalty and betrayal, love and sacrifice. Each character, Marco, who had dared to defy the darkness of his bloodline, Sunny, whose life hung between breath and oblivion, Natalia, crushed by guilt, Brooke, Lynn, and Cody, teetering on the brink of revelation, Danny, carrying a child's lie to shield another. Dante, caught between wrath and compassion, faced their own crucible. In Port Charles, every heartbeat mattered. By the time twilight draped its violet cloak over the city, the stakes had never been higher. Choices made in boardrooms, operating rooms, and quiet nurseries rippled through lives with force unseen. And as the city exhaled, waiting for the next dawn, one truth glowed bright amid the shadows. Even in a world tattered by secrets and stained by violence, redemption remained possible if courage could outshine fear and love could conquer betrayal.